Imagine wars so powerful, they shaped the destiny of America. Yet, many of these battles are rarely spoken of today. They were not as famous as the Revolution or the Civil War, but they changed borders, shaped politics, and determined the nation's future. From forgotten clashes with foreign powers to overlooked wars on American soil, these hidden conflicts tell a story of courage, struggle, and change. This is the untold history of forgotten wars that changed America. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss more hidden stories from history. When people think about America's early years, they often remember the Revolutionary War or the War of 1812. But in between those conflicts, another war shaped the young nation's future, a forgotten naval struggle known as the Quasi-War with France. It all began after the French Revolution. France expected America to help in their war against Britain, but President John Adams decided to keep the new nation neutral. This angered France. French warships began seizing American merchant ships across the Atlantic. The United States, still building its identity, faced a major test: defend its honor or risk being pulled into a massive European war. Congress never officially declared war, but American and French ships clashed at sea for 2 years. This was the first true test for the newly created U.S. Navy. Young officers like Stephen Decatur made names for themselves in these battles. And with every victory, confidence in America's ability to defend its trade and independence grew. Though peace was signed in 1800, the Quasi-War proved a crucial point. The United States would not be bullied by powerful nations. It marked the start of America's rise as a naval power, even if few remember it today. After the Quasi-War, America's Navy was tested once again, this time far from home. The enemy was not a great European empire, but powerful pirates along the North African coast. This forgotten struggle became known as the Barbary Wars. For centuries, Barbary pirates from Tripoli, Algiers, and Tunis had attacked ships in the Mediterranean. They captured crews, held them for ransom, and demanded tribute from nations who wished to trade safely. Most European powers paid the price. But when America refused, the pirates declared war. President Thomas Jefferson made a bold decision. The young United States would not bow to extortion. In 1801, he sent the Navy and the Marine Corps across the ocean, marking America's first overseas military campaign. The fighting was fierce. American ships battled corsairs in the open sea. Sailors fought hand-to-hand on the decks of burning ships. And in 1805, a daring expedition marched across the desert to capture the city of Derna, a moment forever remembered in the Marines' hymn "To the Shores of Tripoli." The Barbary Wars were not just about pirates. They were about respect. The world watched as America proved it would not be intimidated, even on foreign shores. The victories secured safer trade routes, strengthened the Navy, and gave Americans new pride in their military. By the end of the conflict in 1815, the Barbary states were forced to abandon their demands. The United States had stood tall against centuries of piracy, and in doing so, it was not only surviving, but growing into a power to be reckoned with. Though often overlooked today, the Barbary Wars marked America's first steps onto the global stage. A clear message was sent: this nation would defend its honor no matter where the fight took place. While America's eyes were on the War of 1812 against Britain, another brutal conflict was unfolding in the South, a war that would shake the nation's future yet is often forgotten today. It was the Creek War. The Creek people, one of the largest Native American nations in the Southeast, were divided. Some sought peace with the Americans, while others, known as the Red Sticks, resisted fiercely, determined to stop U.S. expansion into their lands. Their resistance was not just about territory. It was about survival, identity, and independence. Violence quickly spread. In 1813, Red Stick warriors attacked Fort Mims in present-day Alabama, killing hundreds of settlers. The massacre shocked Americans and fueled calls for revenge. Soon, militias from Tennessee, Georgia, and the Mississippi Territory poured into Creeklands. Leading them was a rising figure in U.S. history, General Andrew Jackson. The battles were fierce and devastating. Jackson's forces, alongside allied Cherokee and Choctaw warriors, fought campaign after campaign. The climax came in March 1814 at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. Here, Jackson's troops surrounded a fortified Red Stick stronghold. What followed was one of the bloodiest clashes of the era. Over 800 Creek warriors were killed in a single day. The resistance was broken. In the aftermath, the United States forced the Creek Nation to sign a treaty ceding more than 20 million acres of land, territory that makes up much of modern-day Alabama and Georgia. This opened the South for cotton plantations, settlement, and eventually the rise of the slave-driven economy that would shape America for decades. The Creek War is often overshadowed by the larger War of 1812, but its impact was enormous. It crushed Native resistance in the Southeast, expanded U.S. territory, and launched Andrew Jackson onto the national stage, paving his path to the presidency. Forgotten by many, the Creek War changed the map of America forever and set the stage for the nation's relentless push westward. In the mid-1800s, the United States was growing fast. Fueled by the belief in manifest destiny, the idea that America was destined to stretch from coast to coast, the nation set its sights on the lands of the Southwest and California. This ambition led to one of the most significant yet often overlooked conflicts in American history, the Mexican-American War. The war began in 1846 after years of rising tensions. The U.S. had annexed Texas, which Mexico still claimed as its own. When American troops moved into disputed territory along the Rio Grande, fighting erupted. President James K. Polk quickly declared that Mexico had shed American blood on American soil, and war was on. The United States, though still a young republic, had a powerful advantage: better trained troops, modern artillery, and a strong economy to support the war. Mexican forces fought bravely, but were plagued by weak leadership and political instability. The war stretched across vast deserts and rugged mountains. American forces invaded northern Mexico, captured key cities, and then launched a daring campaign deep into the Mexican heartland. The climax came in 1847, when U.S. troops under General Winfield Scott fought their way to Mexico City itself. After a series of bloody battles, the American flag was raised over the capital. Mexico had no choice but to surrender. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the war in 1848. The terms were staggering. Mexico gave up nearly half its territory, lands that today make up California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. In exchange, the U.S. paid Mexico $15 million. The war transformed America. It fulfilled the dream of a continental nation stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But it also came with consequences. The new lands reopened bitter debates over slavery, debates that would ultimately push the country towards civil war. And in Mexico, the war left a legacy of bitterness and loss that is still remembered today. At the turn of the 20th century, the United States was no longer just a nation on the rise. It was becoming a global power. And with power came conflict. One of the bloodiest yet most forgotten wars in U.S. history erupted in the Pacific, the Philippine-American War. It began after the Spanish-American War of 1898. When Spain was defeated, the Philippines expected freedom. Filipino revolutionaries, led by Emilio Aguinaldo, had already fought long and hard against Spanish rule. But instead of independence, the United States claimed the islands as a new possession. Tension quickly turned to war. In 1899, fighting broke out between American troops and Filipino forces outside Manila. What followed was a brutal conflict that dragged on for years. The United States, equipped with modern weapons and tens of thousands of soldiers, faced determined Filipino guerrillas who knew the land and would not surrender easily. Villages were burned, civilians were caught in the crossfire, entire communities were forced into camps to cut off support for the resistance. By the end, more than 200,000 Filipinos, soldiers and civilians, had died, making it one of the deadliest wars in American history. For the United States, the war was a test of identity. Was America a liberator or an empire in disguise? At home, the conflict sparked fierce debate. Many Americans supported expansion, believing it was the nation's duty to bring civilization abroad. But others, including famous voices like Mark Twain and members of the Anti-Imperialist League, condemned the war as a betrayal of America's founding ideals. By 1902, Aguinaldo was captured and resistance largely crushed. The Philippines remained under U.S. control for decades, only gaining independence after World War II. These wars may be forgotten, but their impact is not. They shaped borders, built power, and changed America's destiny. History often remembers the famous battles, but sometimes it's the hidden wars that leave the deepest mark.